Most beginner thinks Mandarin pronunciation is incredibly difficult. But here's something that might surprise you. Without considering Chinese tone, Mandarin pronunciation is actually far more logical and easier than English pronunciation. Mandarin has 37 final in total, including simple final, compound final, and nasal final. Sounds overwhelming, right? In fact, almost every final in Mandarin is built from just 6 basic vowel sounds, R, O, E, I, U, U, and they are the building blocks of the entire pronunciation system. One of my students even told me that after learning Mandarin pronunciation the right way, she found out that it's easier than the English pronunciation. In one of the previous videos, I show you how to master all 13 compound final. In today's video, we are tackling the 16th nasal final. Now, hearing the 16th final might sound like you need to memorize 16 completely different sounds, but you don't. To pronounce all these 16 nasal final correctly, you only need to understand 2 tongue positions, and that's it. Once you master these 2 tongue positions, you will be able to pronounce every Mandarin nasal final with much greater accuracy and confidence. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. So, let's get started. Hello, my name is Jeannie. I'm a Mandarin coach. I help Mandarin beginners who struggle with tones and pronunciation fast-track their progress and finally start speaking Mandarin confidently. Over the past year, I worked with students who start from completely zero and help them reach their first 5-minute Mandarin conversation in about 3 months, without drowning in hundreds of characters, difficult grammar rules, or endless memorization, saving them years of unnecessary time, effort, and frustration. So before we start, we need to understand what are nasal final. A nasal final is simply a final that ends with a nasal sound. In other words, part of the air comes out through your nose when you pronounce it. In Mandarin, there are 2 types of nasal ending. Number 1 is front nasal final. These are called front nasal final because your tongue moves to the front of your mouth. And all of this pinyin all end with the letter N. For example, the pinyin as below, they are all front nasal final. The other group is called back nasal final. The reason why they are called back nasal final is because your tongue moves further back of your mouth. And all of these pinyin all end with the letter NG. For example, the pinyin below, they are all back nasal final. And don't worry, all of these final are built from the sound you already know. Just like the compound final, nasal final follow patterns as well. One of the biggest mistakes learners make is trying to memorize each nasal final individually. But instead, focus on what actually creates the sound, which is your tongue position. Whenever I teach pronunciation, I tell my students, native-like pronunciation comes from mastering mouth position and tongue position. And nasal final are mostly about your tongue position. So if you understand where your tongue should go, the pronunciation just becomes much easier. So let's start with the front nasal final. As you know, all the front nasal final end with the letter N. So the Mandarin N sound is exactly the same as the English N sound. Think about the words like sun, pen, wing. The tongue position is exactly the same. So to make the sound, place your tip of your tongue against the ridge just behind your upper teeth, like this. Then allow the air to flow through your nose. So you will sound like this. So your mouth is a little bit open. Okay, so how we pronounce those from nasal final? Very easy. Same principle. Say the first final, and then we move to the next final. Let's start with this one. So first, say ah, and then move your tongues into the n position. So become like this. Notice how your mouth starts with a wide open ah, and then close slightly as your tongue moves up. Okay, now let's try the next one. This one starts with the Mandarin So let's say the first and move to the position. So this one is So the main difference between the R and it's not the nasal ending. The difference is the vowel before it. So for your mouth open wider. For your mouth stay more relaxed and less open, like this. So try to practice like this. An, 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 then you should understand the difference. That's why I always say mastering the 6 simple final is so important. So if you haven't watched this video, I highly recommend you to, because this is the foundation of all the nasal finals. Okay, now it's your turn. Can you figuring out this nasal final? So pause the video for a couple of minutes and do it by yourself. So the first one is in. This one very simple. It's E and then move to N sound, right? The next one is yun. Because of the U sound, your mouth already moved forwards. So the only change is your tongue position inside. You move your tongue to the top, right? Yun. So this one is a bit different from all the other one. And this one is literally U plus an, which we already learned before. So this one is pronounced as one. So your mouth move from U to an, one. Okay, there is a weird one. So how do you pronounce this one? This one doesn't actually sound like what it actually looks. But instead, it's actually short for one. So the is hidden inside. So the pronunciation is actually U combined with the They actually pronounce as one. Now that's why when the final appears by itself, it's also written as W-E-N, one. So because of this, these two are easily confusing because of another rule, which is when 机器系 meet U, the U is written as U. For example, the following pinyin is actually pronounced as Jun, Chun, Shun, and Yun. Therefore, because of this rule, most of the students always confuse this one is actually one or this one is actually yun sound. In the front nasal final, there are 2 final that do not pronounce as a normal way. They are yen and yuan. So notice that here, R does not pronounce as normal R. R all pronounced as A, like the A in the English words such as bed, get, and red. So to read this one, we need to know here, we do not pronounce as an, we pronounce as n. So when it combined with E, this one pronounced as yen. And when it combined with yu, this one pronounced as yuan. Okay, a quick test. Let's see how you're doing. Pause the video and try the following pinyin yourself. Okay, the first one is pronounced as dan. This one pronounced as ben, ding, dun, yun, juan, qian. If you struggle with this, it's because there's also pinyin rules you all need to know as well to pronounce those things well. So if you like, you can go to check this video, the 7 Chinese Mandarin rules every beginner should know. Go and have a look. In this one, you will have a better understanding how to pronounce all those pinyin. After coaching so many beginners, I noticed some pronunciation mistakes appear again and again. So I put together a free guide called Why You Struggle with Mandarin Pronunciation and Tone, and I summarized the 10 common learning method mistakes that most students make. So if you're interested, click the link below in the description to get your free guide. Now let's move on to the back nasal final. So in order to make this sound, you need to move the back of your tongue upward towards to the soft palate. The tip of your tongue should not touch the front of your mouth at all. At the same time, allow the air flow through your nose. So like this. If you're an English speaker, you already know this sound. It's the same ending sound in the words like this. Sing, song, king, long. Okay, let's start with the easiest one. So simply say E first and then move into your tongue position. So it will become like this. Ying, ying, ying. So the pronunciation is ying, ying, ying. Okay? So a quick note. Many dozen Chinese speakers, including me, do not always distinguish very clearly between yin and ying in the casual speech. So in the Southern China, when we pronounce yin, we actually pronounce as yin. But in the standard Mandarin, there are different sounds. Northern speakers usually make this distinction much more clearer. So if your goal is standard pronunciation, make sure you're hearing and producing both sounds separately, which is yin and ying. Okay, the next one. This one is ong, ong. So basically you pronounce o and then move to that become ong, ong. Notice that Mandarin doesn't have a front nasal final on. So whenever you see this ong, you need to make sure you pronounce the full at the end. Ong, ong, ong. Okay, so these two, this one is pronounced as and this one is pronounced as un. Most of the Mandarin beginners confused with these two nasal final, and. So again, the differences is not about the nasal final, it's about the vowel, the shape itself, which already said it before. So R is a wider mouth, while when you say your mouth is a lot closer and more relaxed. Practice like this, then you will know the difference. So again, if this sounds similar to you, go to watch those simple final video because this is the foundation, all right? So in Mandarin Pinyin, wu and yu do not combine with the nasal final ending by themselves. Instead, they appear in a combination such as wang, wen. All right, now it's your turn. Can you figuring out this following pinyin all by yourself? Pause the video for a moment. I think it's very easy, right? The first one is wu combined with the so it becomes wang, wang. Next one is wu combined with the so it becomes weng, weng. And then the next one is e combined with the so it becomes yang, yang. And this one is the e combined with the ong, so it becomes yong, yong. So some final can also stand alone as a complete pinyin. When that appears, their spelling often change slightly. So in those pinyin, we used to help her Y and W to make the reading and writing a lot easier. It doesn't affect the pronunciation. But if the pinyin combined with any other initial, it still stays the same. For example, if yong combined with initial xi, it's still written as xiong, xiong. But if it's stand alone itself, for example, just yong, then it will show up as this one. So if you would like the full explanation, please check out the video here, 7 Mandarin Chinese rule every beginner should make, and actually explain a lot more clearly why the Y and W show up here and how to use all that. So the next thing you can practice is literally combine with the Chinese tone. Now let me show you how I recommend practice this final, because this is where many beginners make a mistake. They practice like this, then immediately move on. Instead, I recommend you to practice them by focusing on one tone at a time. For example, we only use first tone to practice all those nasal final. For example, like this, ong, yong, yang. Because the problem earlier is that you're trying to learn two different things at one time. The nasal final and then the fourth tone all in one go. That can overwhelm your brain. Instead, like I said, I recommend you to focus on one tone at a time so that you can also focus on the pronunciation. So you're doing by repeating them several times, and then you can move on by practicing them with the second tone, like this, ong, yong. Then you move on to the third tone and then the fourth tone. This allows your brain to focus on the tone separately from the pronunciation. Once you're comfortable with those final, and then you can start combining them with initial. For example, you can combine with the initial and then practice like this. Bang, pang, mang, fang. And then you can change the tone into a second tone like this. Bang, pang, mang, fang. And this is where your pronunciation really starts improving. So this is exactly how I teach my students in my program, 45 Days to Master Mandarin Pronunciation and Tone. We do not try to learn everything at once. Instead, we focus on one skill at a time. And throughout the process, students submit the recording and receive personal feedback. That means you always know exactly what you are doing correctly and exactly know what needs to be improved. If you would like improving your Mandarin pronunciation and tone with structured guidance and feedback, you can check out the link in the description below. By now, we have covered all the Mandarin final. If you haven't watched the previous video on the simple final or the compound final, make sure to check those videos out, as they form the foundation of Mandarin pronunciation. Once you have mastered all the finals, the next step is to learning the initial. I've also have detailed pronunciation video on some of the most challenging Mandarin sounds, including 鸡七西, 知吃诗日, and zi and ci. These are the sounds that many beginners struggle with, but with the right mouth and tongue position, they are much easier than most people think. When you combine the initial and final together, you will have everything you need to pronounce thousands of Mandarin words accurately. So, if your goal is to build a strong pronunciation foundation and sounds more like a native speaker, check out all this video up next. So, I would like to hear from you. How were you taught Mandarin Nasal Final before? And after watching today's video, did you discover a new way to think about them? Welcome to leave a comment and let me know. If you found this video helpful, please give a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it to anyone who's learning Mandarin. So thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one.